Let's welcome Ike Levine.
A wee bit higher. Great. Before I start, they let me in tonight, although there's nothing loathing or fearful, but I'm leaving the country, so they fit me in, so sorry if I'm not in the same category. It's a prop. This is about finding the perfect bottle of scotch. And it started in 1976. I came back from overseas from playing rugby and didn't have a real direction, and so I ended up on Appledore Island, the Isle of Shoals. It's a marine lab run by Cornell University. And back then it only had a generator and not much to do, just 25 Jacques Cousteau wannabes. And fortunately for me, I got to know the cook, who this was his first job. He was the intern at the Ithaca Yacht Club. He's kind of famous now as Sam Haywood, who owns 4th Street Restaurant. So Sam was a good time guy, and he had this wonderful generosity about sharing his love for scotch, which I had never drank. But I took the lessons quite well, and at the end of the summer, there's a lookout tower. It was built in World War II. And up at the top floor, he shared a dram of 25-year-old Glenlivet that was made for the Queen's anniversary. So it came out in 1975. This is now 1976. And it was magical. So that evening ended, the summer ended, and we parted company. And I ended up in Hawaii in graduate school. So the story continues, and I met my wife, who's here, and 3 days later, I asked her to marry me. And she had heard the story about this scotch, and she tried, but unsuccessful, to find a bottle of it. And a wee bit after that, she decided to retire and raise kids, so we moved to Poland, Maine. And so after my second daughter was born, well, my first daughter, but my second child, I started looking for the bottle again for her first year birthday party to share with my best friends this wonderfulness that comes out of a bottle. So I wrote Glenlivet a letter and said, it's the first birthday. I would like to share it with my great friends. I gave them the story about the island and Sam and my education of scotch. Could they send me a bottle? Well, the party came, the party went, no bottle. But 6 or 7 months later, the DHL truck came up. Guy delivers a box. Boxes from Seagram's. Can't figure out why Seagram's would be sending me a box. Open it up. It's an old bottle of scotch filled with lead foil. No receipt, no tax stamp. And so there was an address in New York City, a telephone. I call it up. It's the VP of Seagram Sales. So why are you sending me this bottle? Well, on the QT in 75, Seagram's bought out Glenlivet, and they didn't want people to know. But they had sent the letter to Scotland, and the distillery master loved the letter. He sent me the bottle of scotch. So the party was over, but I had some friends. In fact, one of the storytellers later can attest to it because I shared some with him, and even with Sam down at 4th Street. Well, that might have been the end of the story, but 6 or 7 years later, I had some work in Aberdeen, and so I took a couple extra days to do the whiskey trail. And no trip to Scotland would be complete without going to Glenlivet. Went through their tour, happened to mention the letter and the bottle. They all snickered and brought me in the back room, and there and behold was my letter on the wall of the distillery master. So they gave me this glass, and we tried, we drank some more good scotch, and that was fun, and then I left, and of course, without GPS, I got lost. I'm in the roads and come upon a bunch of sheeps. And the sheep's in the road, and, sheeps are just doing what sheeps do. So I pull over, and I go up to this house, and I say, your sheeps are out of wherever they're supposed to be. And they sort of laughed, and they were pleased with my courtesy of coming up to them, and they were having tea. And so they invited me in, and we had some tea, although I hate scones. I don't know. I know that's popular, but I don't. So they're having tea, and I talked about my trip. I talked to them about Glenlivet. I talked about my glass, showed them my glass, tell them about the bottle. And lo and behold, it was the house of the retired distillery master who sent me the bottle. And so I spent the night drinking his private stash with my glass in the Highlands of Scotland. Cheers.